who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong, and who's going to win on Tuesday. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 Sessions with Aaron Brillback and Bill Shepard. Look, doesn't Grant Herms look a lot like Bill Shepard today?
Kind of does.
A big pollster.
Well, your poll is certainly making big news this week. What did you think about what you found in? Because I know you're covering the governor race every single day.
Every day. I found it interesting that the needle really hasn't moved a whole lot. What's going on?
Well, I thought it was really important to make sure that we understand that this lead that Stitt has is only a 5-point lead, and that it's very soft, because there are so many other things going on in the poll that just make me question, what is really going to happen on Election Day. Remember now, polling is only a measurement of 1 point in time, right? And so a lot of people want to use it as a predictive science to say this is what will happen. But a lot can change. And as I've been saying for some time, for the first time in a generation, independents and moderate voters are going to have a key role in this election. And these people like to change their minds. Sometimes they vote Republican, sometimes they vote Democrat. And so what we're going to find is that they might actually be changing their mind and moving back and forth between now and Election Day. And that makes polling very difficult. When the goalpost keeps moving, makes it very hard.
Will there be enough, though, moderates that this might make a difference?
Well, we in our polling have constantly shown that 1 in 3 voters on Election Day is a moderate. I mean, as much as we talk about how conservative the state is, yes, 55% typically identify as conservative, and that's the largest portion. But when you get down to winning an election within 6 points, 1 in 3 voters makes a big difference and can.
We got to talk about Mary Fallin and the endorsement that she gave to Stitt and his commercials afterwards. Walk me through all this, man.
Well, you know more of what happened in the course of things. I can tell you from the polling, Mary Fallin now has reached an all-time low in the Sooner poll.
19%, right?
Yes, or look at it the opposite way. 75% of voters have an unfavorable opinion of Mary Fallin. That's also 64% of Republicans. So I don't want people thinking out there, oh, they just don't like her because she's a Republican. 64% of Republicans have an unfavorable opinion of her. And so I can't help but feel like that is having some sort of negative impact on this governor's race.
So the worst thing that could have happened for Stitt is for Mary Fallin to come forward and say, I endorse this guy.
Yeah, and I don't know if he asked for it or she offered it or he did not turn it down. If I was Kevin Stitt, I would have said to Mary Fallin politely, please endorse my opponent. Because quite frankly,
How do you say that politely?
Well, I don't know how you do politely, but the point is that she is, her numbers are very bad, even among people within her own party. And I don't think an endorsement was helping. He had to have known that commercial that he's doing that is very disparaging of her was in the can or in the works or something. So what are you doing taking her endorsement? What are you doing even talking to her about one? I mean, in all honesty, please, Mary, just wait this out. Just sit quietly and let us try to keep the governor's chair.
But it might have been in Stitt's best interest, too, to not even run that commercial. Just kind of keep it quiet. Let it die.
Yeah, I really don't know. You saw our exclusive dial testing that we did for News 9, and it showed that, even Kevin Stitt's language when he talks about running it like a business, and I'm a CEO, and we need someone who knows how to talk to CEOs, moderate voters are just not moved by that. And I think that plays well into this discussion, because if he is going to lose some Republicans simply because of Mary Fallin, he's got to go looking other places for them. And right now, he's running the same campaign this last 2 months of the general election that he ran in the last 12 months. Yes, he's a Republican, he's a conservative, and he can talk that line. But he should have known, a guy running a multi-million-dollar business ought to have known that he should have done some research, not just coasted for the next 2 months, but done some research like we did and really find out what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's apparent he didn't do it.
Okay, one time there was a statement about Bear Bryant. You millennials have to go find out who Bear Bryant was. And it was Bear Bryant, the coach at Alabama. Okay, so they were saying was, I think it was the Georgia coach said one time about Bear Bryant, he can take his'n and beat your'n, or take your'n and beat his'n. Okay, you're a Southeast Commerce guy, you know what that means. So the question I'm about to ask is the management of the Stitt campaign, and the reason I ask it is because I look at all the rest of the down ballot Republicans. You can't even see their taillights, okay? The Democrats, good try, you ain't gonna win. But you're sitting at the top of the ticket, and Drew Edmondson, who's been around for a long time, and this is supposed to be the outsider time, right? This thing is neck and neck. Is this a matter of management, or what in the world is happening that Stitt would be flagging at the end when all of the indicators are that down ballot Republicans are doing great?
Well, I think it's he didn't do the research that was necessary. He didn't know that this was going to be close. I think
Local or state management, by the way?
well, his campaign, I think, is being run by people out of state. I think it makes a lot of people within the state nervous because they get paid whether he wins or loses. Republicans are thinking, if he loses, then we're the ones that really lose out on this deal. But I think that he should have done some research. He should have instinctively understood that he was not going to be able to run the same kind of campaign he ran for the last 12 months and be successful. I think that he has not talked as much about education as I think he should be. In fact, I thought that it should have been more of a comprehensive plan to work with other Republicans. I mean, I think we know that there's going to be more money for education next year. Right? So why aren't the Republicans crowing from the rooftops?
Right.
We're going to spend more on education. Have you even heard any of them saying anything like that? And so why wouldn't they be? Because that gives the voters an opportunity to say, well, what's happened in the last year or 2 years hasn't worked quite very well for us. But guess what? Next year is great, and we'll be able to then spend more money on education. I thought Stitt would have done a great thing to join with them, maybe come out with some message. But we've seen none of that. It's almost like they thought, gosh, let's just keep our hats on while it's raining hard and hope that we can be successful on Election Day and make it barely across the finish line. And I think that's a very poor strategy.
What should Edmondson have done differently to try to capitalize on this?
I think he's doing everything he can. I'm having a difficult time looking from the polling or from the dial testing where Edmondson is not doing a good job. He knows how to talk to moderates. He knows how to talk to conservative Democrats. I mean, 1 in 5 people who identify as a conservative have a favorable view of Drew Edmondson. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen that in some time. He is doing, I think, a super job at trying to do that. If he falls short on Election Day, I think it'll do in large part to the fact that the Republican Party has grown just so much in the last 8 years that it's just there's too many votes now to overcome. But I think I have a tough time seeing where Drew is messing this up.
Did the Republicans nominate the only guy that could possibly lose to Drew Edmondson?
They might have, but they could have also probably made a bigger mistake by, I think, Todd Lamb. I mean, God love him. He was a good lieutenant governor, probably would have made a great governor, but the timing, as you know, timing is very critical in politics. And had he been that, boy, Drew Edmondson would have been able to pin all of the sins of that administration on him, and I think that would have been a disaster. So are you getting at that he should have, maybe the Republicans should have picked Mick Cornett?
I'm getting to this point. I'm wondering if we haven't reached a point in Oklahoma where to get the nomination really hurts you in the general election.
Well, particularly trying to win a Republican runoff, which we know that's driven in large part by very conservative Republicans.
Do you think today that Mick Cornett would be neck and neck with Drew Edmondson, or that he'd have a big lead?
I think he'd have a bigger lead, and I think our polling showed that. In exclusive polling for News 9, we found that at the time of the runoff, that Mick Cornett was polling better against Drew Edmondson than Kevin Stitt was. Now, we could theorize at that time that Kevin Stitt had not spent a lot of money positioning himself to independents or to Democrat voters at that time, that he would need to introduce himself once he got into the general election, and maybe those numbers would move, and they have naturally moved where we now have him at a 5-point lead. But that being said, I think Mick Cornett would have had higher numbers because he appeals more to the moderate base. He would not have been saying things that we saw in the dial testing, which is we need someone who can run this like a business. He wouldn't have been saying those things, and I think he would have appealed better to those voters that I think are going to be much more critical in this election.
So what happens from here? I mean, are we going to see any last-minute surprises, or is this thing just going to come to the wire?
No, I think we could. I think both candidates ought to be very concerned about how they position themselves to moderates and independents. I think both of them need to have a game plan here late in the last week, or less than that now, a game plan to do that. But have those seeds already been sown for Kevin Stitt? Can he change that? I'm not so sure. Can Drew Edmondson now do a better job of trying to appeal to him. I think he's done the best that he can. In fact, he's appealed better than Stitt has. I think that Drew Edmondson right now is focused on turnout. I think he needs to increase Democrat turnout and enthusiasm. We saw in our exclusive poll with News 9, enthusiasm among Democrats went up. But guess what? It was only getting up to where Republicans were already. And with Kavanaugh and the caravan and jobs not mobs, the Republicans have been able at the national level to galvanize their base and get them turned out into a lazy midterm election that's typical for the party in power. And that has really helped a lot.
Can I ask you about turnout real quick? Let me give you the forecast for Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sunny, 59. Rain on Monday. So if it's sunny, how does that affect the turnout? We'll start with Mr. Edmondson. Who has to turn out for him?
Well, he has to get his own base turned out. We're finding 78% of Democrats.
Who's in that base?
Well, Democrats. It's
What age?
Over the 60, older voters, 55. Drew Edmondson's looking at all ages. He would like for younger people to turn out, but I would throw a caveat in there that people need to be very cautious of looking at young voters the way we look at them at the national level. At the national level, young voters tend to be more liberal, tend to be more voted Democrat. If you just take a look at registration in the state of Oklahoma of voters under the age of 34, half are Republican, half are Democrat. So we don't here in a red state necessarily have the same profile of 18 to 34-year-olds.
It's got to be nice to get millennials out.
Well, he's got to, for Drew Edmondson,
yeah.
I think he's got to motivate them without a doubt because that will be very helpful to him. I'm not so sure that Kevin Stitt appeals to young Republicans with regard to education or healthcare or things that are naturally important to them, starting families, getting jobs, things of that nature. Trump is sucking all the oxygen out of the room right now with the amount of jobs that he's creating at the national level. I don't think Stitt, even though he's created jobs and grown a business and can talk that line, I'm not so sure that will necessarily move young Republican voters. However,
your research indicates I'm going to run it like a business ain't working. Right?
It's just not working. It's not working with moderates. It's not working with independents. It's not working with Democrat voters.
So Brooks Brothers crowd is not going to be fired up by this, right?
But why isn't it working? I mean, it worked with Trump.
Well, because I don't think that Stitt has the reality TV profile that Donald Trump has. Also, too, I want to go back and look at where is this compared to 8 years ago, right? Mary Fallon was getting between 20 and 30% of the Democrat vote. That's almost 1 in 3 Democrats were crossing party lines to vote for a Republican. In this poll, I show Kevin Stitt at a measly 2-point net crossover vote. It's not even measurable, which means then that the overwhelming number of Democrats are saying, I'm not voting Republican, I'm going to vote Democrat. I don't like what's happened over the last few years, teacher strikes, budget deficits, I'm voting Democrat. Republicans are still, no, I want to stay the course. I don't see now I still feel like there is some crossover, but it's neutralized by each of them. This is the reason why I keep saying that independents now become much more critical. And I think it's been very smart for the Democrats to invite the independents to their primary because you get them what? In the habit of voting for Democrats, right? So when it then comes through a general election, hopefully they'll be more Democratic in their voting.
You want to talk about the behind-the-scenes polling? How about Republicans in the legislature I'm talking to? They're like, oh, man. Democrats in the legislature, oh, man. I mean, how can you can't poll feelings, right? But you sense momentum.
Yeah.
Give us an idea what you think where the momentum lies.
Well, I thought the momentum was with Democrats well before the Republican runoff, for example. But Kavanaugh and caravans have changed that and helped the Republicans at least equalize it. You have to understand, here in Oklahoma, when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, they turned out at what they had been turning out in prior elections. And then suddenly, in 12 and 16, there's a part of the Democrat base here in Oklahoma that just tuned out. They became disengaged. And why is that? I think it's because they were more conservative leaning, more moderate leaning, and Barack Obama governed as a liberal. And there were a lot of things that he did that they just said, you know, that's just not my party anymore. That's why I think we see a lot of this walk away stuff.
Right.
And even now, as much as 40% of African Americans at the national level are saying that they have a favorable view of Donald Trump. I think that these things are having an impact. And I think that Democrats in the state are just not the same profile of those at the national level. I mean, Drew Edmondson and the rest of the Democrats running at the state level have to live still under this Democrat liberal national umbrella. And they're struggling because of it. I mean, the real question is that will Democrats ever have another conservative or more center-leaning governor or candidate? Are they going to go more and more far to the left? And that would be terrible for their party. I've been saying that on Sooner Poll for the better part of a decade now.
Are the ads making any difference?
You know what? You tell me. Are you seeing any kind of difference on the ads? I mean, I think that the Republicans and the far right trying to connect Drew Edmondson to Hillary Clinton, calling him DC Drew and
Nancy Pelosi.
Pelosi. I don't see it working. I mean, because in our polling we showed that Drew Edmondson was leading in favorability by 3 points. Well, it shows that it's not working. You're not driving down his favorables or driving his unfavorables up. And so I don't think that the ads are working. I think that they had this thing in their mind and this is what we're going to do. And it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, Hillary's not president. And Hillary doesn't come to Oklahoma. And Nancy Pelosi, while she's easy to demonize, Oklahomans really don't care about that.
Right.
I think that the Republicans should have been sharper in their message, and I think that the Democrats have, keep in mind who's being more negative right now. Who would you say?
Stitt.
Well, or at least the Republicans on his side,
Right.
and yet the Democrats are gaining. I think people are fed up and tired of all the negative, all of the name calling, the ad hominem attacks.
Have you seen one that's particularly effective? An ad? Either of you guys use?
No, I really haven't. I agree with you 100%. I think, I don't know if people are necessarily tired of the attack ads. I just don't think these attack ads are very effective attack ads.
How about the Echo one? Have you guys seen the Echo one where the governor is saying one thing?
That was
and
effective.
You like that?
That was effective.
That's what it looks like.
We have a great opportunity
We've got a great opportunity
to move Oklahoma forward.
to move our state forward.
No more kicking cans down the road.
Kicking the can down the road.
I have been in the private sector.
But I've been in the private sector
Working really, really hard.
really, really hard.
But I have a plan for Oklahoma.
And I've got a plan.
We're going to make it run like a business.
I'm going to run state government like a business.
We tighten our belts.
We may have to tighten our belts.
To focus on education,
We've got to focus on education.
We can fix it.
I'm going to get in there and fix it,
create jobs, and of course move our economy forward.
creating jobs and moving our economy forward.
We can't keep doing the same old thing and expect a different result.
We can't keep doing the same things and expect different results.
You heard that before?
So I don't know. How's the media performed? I want to ask you, let's pretend he's not in the room because he's done a great job. But on the national level, the Democrats are talking about pre-existing conditions. We haven't seen healthcare get involved in this at all. And I'm wondering, man, Dee's where you at on healthcare? Now, Mr. Edmondson's talking about it. But all over this country right now, the Democrats are talking healthcare issues. We got this situation in Pauls Valley,
Right.
That the present company excluded. The press is largely ignoring. They think it's a local story in Pauls Valley. It ain't, for heaven's sakes.
Yep.
But in terms of right now, all guns are blazing at the governor. From this ad we just saw, it's all about the governor, not Nancy Pelosi.
And I think that's the reason why Drew Edmondson's doing so well in rural areas. I think it was a foregone conclusion that Kevin Stitt would do very well in the rural areas. That's where the Republicans have had huge gains in registration. But yet, in my first poll, I had them tied in rural areas 45-45, and now in this last poll, I had Kevin Stitt by just a measly 3 points. So what's going on? And I think that when you look at it, people that in Ada, not everyone in Ada or Enid or McAllister are connected directly to agriculture. What's most important to these voters? Rural schools, education funding, and health care.
Churches,
like Pauls
community.
Valley.
Yep.
Church and community. And so where has Kevin Stitt been on those issues? Why aren't they talking more about health care or predominantly rural health care and making sure that we can protect those hospitals? Because look, if you live in a rural area, why would you continue to live there if the schools are not any good and if you get sick or ill, you can't be rushed to a local hospital. You've got to be taken all the way someplace else. it will ruin, in my opinion, Oklahoma's rural way of life. And I do not hear the Republicans talking as much about that as they should.
Well, I think it's a touchy subject for Stitt, too, because on one hand, you say, yes, I want to get $900 million through Medicare expansion, but we don't want to concede and say that Obamacare is, or at least a portion of Obamacare was a good thing.
Yeah.
So the concern is, we don't want to look like we're favoring one way or another, so we'll just say no Medicare expansion whatsoever, and we'll take care of things as the economy improves.
When we saw Democrat support for Mary Fallin fall off, remember she was at a high in favorability, 70 to 80%, right around the time of the more tornadoes. She lost Democrat support when she would not expand Medicaid in the state. We see it in the polling. I think where the Republicans failed is saying, okay, we don't want to do that for a variety of different reasons, but what's our replacement? We just can't sit and ignore it. So I keep asking Republicans, what are you going to do? Sooner Care, how are you going to? Well, we don't have enough money. We don't even have money for schools. Well, I don't think that's an answer.
Right.
I think that that's the reason why we are where we are.
And Wednesday morning, one of these gentlemen is going to have to wake up and deal with DOC's budget, healthcare problems, education. It's all out there, which means we'll be back next week. On behalf of Aaron Brillback, thanks, Bill Shapner, for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Bill.